Hello, this is William Cooper. Welcome to Awakening Together, Relaxing into Happiness. How are you doing this week? I trust well. Today, I'd like to talk to you about your multidimensional nature in awakening. We're both beyond existence and we're everything in existence. This all can be experienced, but because it's so vast, you'll notice yourself opening or awakening in many different dimensions all at the same time. Maybe sequentially, or maybe some things awaken before other things. That's, of course, most likely. But nonetheless, you'll notice many awakenings going on in your existence, and many of them at the same time, many open places at the same time. And the more open places that you're experiencing, the more your deep, infinite nature flows through your created self, and it opens up other areas. For instance, you are comprised of a physical body, and within that physical body or associated with it are emotions and thoughts and feelings and a psychology and a personal self, a nutritional self, a lot of different things. And as one opens, it affects the others. So let's talk about it for just a moment, because it's very interesting, and sometimes people specialize in a certain area, for instance, nutrition, and they go very deep into nutrition, and they have an awakening. It flows all through their body, or perhaps yoga, and it flows all through their body, mind, and emotions. Or karma yoga, where they're giving to others, and that alone opens up their entire life. There are many portals, many avenues to affect all of you, because everything is interconnected. However, you might notice that depending on where somebody is that you may be listening to, they may be describing awakening in nutritional terms, or through physical activity, or through interactions with others, or through their thought processes, or psychology, or emotional work, or spiritual work, or working with angels or other beings that aren't fully in this planet, or so many different things. And at the same time, you may notice you're experiencing perhaps many of these things all at the same time. So that's what this podcast is about, is just to sort of throw light on the fact that that's normal in your awakening. And maybe I'll describe some of these things and flesh it out a little bit, so that in your awakening, as you recognize things, you simply relax even more deeply, smile, and know what's going on. You likely already do, but it's a good podcast subject maybe, so let's talk about it. What I started noticing, and this happened over time, not all at once, but I started noticing that I'm more like a rainbow than anything else, and I often describe myself that way. And you've heard me do that in past podcasts. And what I mean by that is, on one end of the rainbow is a complete emptiness. It's beyond creation. Because it's beyond creation, it doesn't exist, because only things in creation exist. And it sounds a little bit like double talk, but it's really not. It's the infinite, and it's where everything comes from. Some people have called it, one man said, it's the fullest emptiness you'll ever experience. The funny thing is, you really can't experience it like you normally experience other things, because all of our senses, our mind, our emotions, are designed to experience things in this world, and stuff beyond this world you can't experience with your senses. So I spent probably a decade looking for this emptiness everybody was talking about, and I could never find it. I could never find it because it didn't exist. And yet, as my intuition developed, suddenly I quote unquote found it. Because you can know yourself, contrary to what some people may say, but you know yourself through intuition. It's beyond this existence, yet it's still very knowable, and it is beyond words because it doesn't exist, yet you can make attempts to describe it. It's the potential, more or less, of everything that springs from it. Everything that you see in creation comes from this emptiness. Often, well, all the time actually, I see this creation strobe in and out of existence. It goes from this emptiness into the fullness of creation, back into emptiness, into the fullness of creation. Let's say 1,000,000 times a second. It's so fast it can't be counted, but it's like a very fast strobe light. And creation comes into existence very quickly that way, and then it fades out. And it's created fresh, anew, in a millisecond. And then it completely disappears. That leaves the potential, if you think about it, for there to be a fresh creation in a completely new way in every millisecond, because it is being created fresh anyway. Why does it get created in a way that looks pretty much like the last millisecond that just went out of creation and then coincides with the new creation that just now comes into creation? Well, I suspect it's momentum and all of our thought forms, because we are powerful creators, and our thought forms are what shape this emptiness into something. And I think it's just the way we are stuck, the way we look at life, because there are some beings, you can read about Jesus, for instance, that did quote unquote miracles. I think he shaped things anew, fresh. And other saints, there are many of them in India. I've seen this happen where they do quote unquote miracles right before your eyes. So people can do that. They can shape existence into creation in new and different ways. But most of us, frankly, are habituated and are asleep, so we keep seeing things the way we've been seeing things. It's like what we're looking at confirms what we think the world should look like or be. So we keep looking at it that way. Anyway, existence strobes in and out of creation. And the way I experience it on one end of the rainbow is this emptiness. And as this emptiness comes into creation, the first thing when it first becomes a created thing, it's brilliant light. So I experience brilliant light. And then as that light slows down, it turns into sound. And it's the sound of the universe, that Om sound, very low pitch that the monks mimic when they chant Om. That's the sound. And there's also a very high-pitched sound that happens when the light slows down and turns into sound. Then the sound, as it slows down and congeals into creation, into a more created thing, a more substantial thing, it turns into bliss. And as that bliss slows down, it turns into atoms and molecules, and those molecules turn into all of the rest of creation. That's my experience. You may have your own, but that's my experience. So it's a rainbow. It's a continuum. And all these things are happening at the same time, one flowing into the other. So that's one way that I experience things. And there are other ways, because once in creation and things have turned into molecules and into things, dogs, cats, all sorts of things, me, my body, I start to experience myself as within a physical body. I create emotions, I create thoughts, I create a psychological self, a being. I create all sorts of things. So I experience myself that way, and all of these things can open up. I experience myself as an energy system. I experience myself as an intellectual system, as an emotional system. Actually, I'm interconnected to all things. I start to experience myself as the trees around me, as the animals around me. I start to experience myself as all sorts of things. The deeper I let go into oneness. So, depending on where I put my focus, I will experience myself that way. And that way that I'm experiencing myself can either be tight and locked up or open and flowing in a continuum with all the rest of creation, with all the deeper parts of myself. Why would these parts lock up? Well, generally because there's been some kind of separation, which we've talked about in past podcasts. And because of that separation, pain is formed. The pain of the fear of separation, the feeling of abandonment because I'm separated, or anger or frustration because I'm separated from my deepest self. I clench up, and the more I clench up, the more I form some sort of pain, emotional, intellectual, actual physical pain or illness, all sorts of pains and discomforts. And the more pain I generate, the more I don't like to feel it. So then I start hallucinating thoughts. Thoughts are merely hallucinations that can be used constructively or in other ways. I can use them for fantasy life, which might be constructive if I'm trying to get away from pain. So I start to fantasize things. I start to create emotions which are more like 3D hallucinations that give me feelings that go along with my thoughts. Or vice versa, I create thoughts to go along with my feelings of separation. So I get locked up, and because it doesn't feel good, I might start getting addicted to other substances, food, too much TV, drugs, whatever, to get away from my pain. So then I become more and more locked up in a cycle. The process of awakening is undoing all of that, letting it go, letting it dissolve away, and once again, flowing into openness. Okay, so let's say now you're completely open and you're flowing. You've let go of that pain. We've talked about that in past podcasts. So we've already done that, or we're in the process of doing that. What do you notice? You notice these openings all up and down the line. And you may notice that other people describe their openings depending on which part of their continuum they're focusing on. For instance, some people that are connected to their physical body will find that working out and doing exercises loosens their body and helps it open up. Or they do yoga and it helps them open up. And as their body opens up, because we're interconnected with ourselves, our mind slows down. Our emotions begin to open up. And if we have a complete system where we're also seeing clearly, we're not recreating blocks by thinking poorly and blocking ourselves anew, creating another creation that is blocked. If we're just stepping aside and letting openness happen, then the physical exercise or the yoga starts to affect these other things like the emotions, the psychology, the mind, and the whole system starts to open up. So you can come into your system through any portal. Anything will be helpful. So let's talk about some of these portals, because you might hear somebody talk about or even specialize in one area, and maybe they don't mention the others. Maybe they're not connected or even aware of the other areas, but you are. And you're experiencing different things happening, different openings at different speeds in your awakening, all up and down the line. So what might some of them be? Well, there's the physical, as we just talked about. But there's also your energy systems. You've perhaps heard of the 7 chakras. These are 7 main energy systems. We have probably thousands of them all through the body, but they're little ones. The main ones would be these 7. And as they open up, you begin to experience life in a different way. You have your root chakra, and that's at the bottom of your spine, and it's connected to the earth, to creation, to reality. And as you relax there, you feel grounded, you feel supported, you feel trusting, stable, strong. You relax and you feel like you've got something solid flowing through you, a solid power. That's when your root chakra opens. So you may experience that. You have the second chakra, which is your sexual chakra. That's around your genital area, and that's obviously lots of energy. That's your energy chakra. So you'll feel a huge energy connection with the world around you. The world will feel like energy. You will give and take, give and receive energy with those around you. And it doesn't have to be sexual, it's just energy. A lot of energy practices are designed to open up the chakra on some level. In India, a lot of things rotate around energy, including astrology or fire ceremonies. They reach much deeper into other areas, but they're designed to work with your energy center. Tantra is designed to work with your energy center. Often people associate that in the West with sexuality, but no, it's just an energy connection. It's a connection to all things, all of creation and beyond, energetically. Your third chakra around your solar plexus is where there's power. When it's open, you feel power. You feel a huge power flowing through you. It can almost be overwhelming. Recently, I've been feeling, at first it was painful, and I guess for most of my life, I felt pain in that area. And as it's opened, I get intermittent light and power, and it's very powerful. It's so powerful, it is kind of painful. But then it's not. So that is in it, the process of opening. The chakra above it is the heart chakra. And as that opens, it's in the heart area, you feel deep love. And above that's the throat. There's clear speech as that opens. There's the feeling of truth, or the connection to truth and clarity through speech. And there's a power there. There's a creative power. You can speak things into existence. There's a vibration that goes through your throat. The third eye, right above your, the center, right between your eyebrows, slightly above, is your third eye. And as that's clear and open, you have a lot of clarity and intuition. You see things clearly. You connect to the beyond, the emptiness, and you're very clear about things. There's the crown chakra, that's at the top of your head. And that's the interconnection of all things. That's oneness with all things. I had a guru, and he said sometimes people get confused because depending on when they awake, which chakra is primarily open when they have their awakening, quote unquote awakening, that's how they see the world, at least in the beginning. So, for instance, he said that if you awaken through the heart, you'll often see the world as Christ might, through love. All religions have love, and these are all interconnected, but as a generality, a big generality, he'd said that's a Christian awakening. And in his words, the awakening in the throat chakra is an Islamic awakening. There's deep acceptance. You know the truth, you feel the truth, there's clarity, and there's a deep acceptance of the deepest truth of all creation and beyond. If you awaken in the third eye, there's a connection to the beyond and emptiness. And he says that's a Buddhist awakening. And on the crown, it's complete joy and bliss and the bliss of all things. Because remember, as I was saying, I experience all things are made of bliss. And that would be a Hindu awakening. Now, again, Hinduism connects deeply to emptiness. Buddhism connects deeply to the joy of all things. So, and Christianity and Islam do too. So this is not to be exclusive, but it might be the primary or the major thing that somebody that awakens through these chakras might start to feel, and that was his way of describing it. So you may notice that you open in one of these chakras first, but all these chakras are interconnected and they influence one another, and as one opens, others may start to open. So you may start to feel all of these things up and down the line as they begin to open. Why don't things open? Why are they opening? Why weren't they already opened? Well, because, as we talked about before, there's pain. The only reason anything is shut is because of pain. We don't like to feel pain, so we shut down to protect ourselves. We love to feel happiness and joy and well-being, so that's openness, peace. We open for all of that. So the only reason we close and we have tension is because there's pain in the system. And when we put our attention on that pain, one of the reasons we like to hallucinate into fantasies or distract ourselves through action is because we don't want to feel the pain. That's what's behind addictions. We don't want to put our attention on something and feel the pain. Now, when we do feel it, it starts to dissolve, and eventually it does melt into light or joy, and the blockage is gone. But until it does dissolve, it's painful. And we don't want to feel that pain, so we take substances or we go for a jog. And I know jogging's healthy, but it can also be addictive. Any action can be. I'm not picking on jogging. It could be watching TV or talking incessantly or hallucinating thoughts like crazy. We become addicted. Even chasing angels or talking to angels or spirituality, that can be addictive. Being around your guru can be addictive because you're trying to get away from your pain. If that's what you're trying to do, well, then it can become addictive. Now, often a guru is clear enough to see what's going on, and they guide you into your deepest clarity. In fact, the word guru is made of two words. Gu is darkness and ru is light. Your darkness or ignorance or blocks, because you're blocking your light, that's why there's darkness, is dissolved by the other's light, ru, guru. The guru's light dissolves your blocks, your darkness. So gurus will generally guide you through all this, even if you're first attracted to them because you're trying to avoid your pain, which most people are. That's why they go to gurus, usually, often, let's say. So somebody could describe their awakening as deep love, but that's because they've awoken through their heart chakra. Another one as deep emptiness. That's because they primarily have first opened up through their third eye. So if somebody describes something a certain way, you can know that's helpful for you to know about that, but you may experience your awakening in different ways, or all of these ways at the same time. There are other ways to awaken. Some people do it through nutrition. They just eat clear, good food, strong food. Once I went to Brazil and I was there for, I think it was 6 weeks, and I was eating some Brazilian food, and there was so much nutrition in that food that I was dizzy and I felt kind of high. In fact, very high. And it was simply the food. And I had this experience over and over and over because they have rich, good soil and they grow very nutrient-rich foods. Whereas compared to where I'm from, I think the soil's worn out and, maybe the food looks the same, but there's not so much in our food generally. So we get by, but it's not going to be waking you up. Another time, I went to Yogananda's ashram, Lake Shrine, and somebody handed me, they have a big botanical garden. It's all around the lake, and there are flowers everywhere. And somebody handed me an edible flower they just picked from right around the lake. And they said, hey, you can eat this, try it. So I ate it, and wow, my head started spinning. There was so much light in that flower. It just threw me into a temporary awakening at the moment. It spread all through my system. When one system opens, it can affect all the systems. So you see people who, through their nutrition, they just glow. So you can open through nutrition. Some people open through art. One of the former ministers of art said that true art is something that when you're in its presence, it opens you to the divine. He said everything else is simply a pretty picture. Well, art, music can open you up. All of these things can open. And when somebody is open, they're flowing and they're not blocked, at least in that moment. Now, what to look at, though, is when you remove that music, do you close down? When you remove the nutrition, do you close down? When you remove the art, do you close down? When you quit jogging, do you close down? All these things can open you up. When you stop your yoga, do you close down? Do your blocks reappear? That's why in these podcasts, we go at it very deeply to remove some of and be aware of some of the deepest things that are going on. So because awareness is curative, because we're aware of them and we keep our attention on them and we meditate and we stay with it, we let them dissolve, we don't close down as rapidly. I bring up these other areas of awakening, though, because for you, as you do what we talk about in the podcast, as you evolve, and perhaps you already have evolved way past these podcasts, but as you continue to evolve, you can use any of these portals to encourage and support yourself in your awakening. Nutrition can start you glowing. Exercise, jogging can open you up. Yoga, any of these things we've talked about, psychotherapy. Let me tell you a story, as long as we're on psychotherapy. Often in India, is a very powerful place. I mean, it's just radiant there. And some of these gurus are so powerful you can hardly move, and they're so deep, and they've worked so hard, and they've become so clear. Yes. And in that culture, sometimes they completely overlook the psychological self. They treat it perhaps as part of the illusory world. Sometimes they do that. Some of them do. Some of them don't, but some do. And I knew a Swedish woman who was married to a Indian man, a South Indian man, where I go, Tiruvannamalai, where the Guru Ramana ashram is. He passed away in the 50s. And she told me what you've seen so many times. She said that her former husband, as well as many gurus that she knew living in the culture, were so deep, but when you touch their unresolved emotional conflicts, they shut down, they kind of went berserk. They might start beating their wives and drinking alcohol, doing all sorts of inappropriate things. This can happen because they've missed this part of the rainbow. In our culture, we're pretty good with our psychology. At least we know it exists. Our problem is we're often too identified with it, and we believe we are our psychology, which truly isn't the case, as we've talked about in our past podcast. But it is the vehicle we drive through life, and it is helpful if it runs smoothly. We don't want to be triggered every time somebody looks at us funny and start screaming or crying, because that's a bumpy ride through life. It's, as they say in India, inauspicious. You want an auspicious life, a good life, a happy life, because after all, your nature is happy. It is abundant. So you exist in all these realms. What are some other realms? Yes, I've experienced other beings. Jesus has appeared. Angels have appeared. I've talked to them. Perhaps you have too. It was a surprise to me when it first happened. I don't go looking for these things, and it's been a while. Although, as you become more and more intuitive, you start to just be connected to all of these beings pretty much all of the time, and you start being guided, so to speak. But for me, fundamentally, I put my attention on my core and let the guidance flow through my incarnation rather than striving to talk to angels or beings, because that can throw you off center if you're chasing after every angel that's flying by or trying to talk to Jesus all the time about every little issue. I used to talk to my guru every single day, multiple times, clairvoyantly. And one time I was visiting him in real life, and he looked at me kind of puzzled, and he had millions of followers. And he said, "The funny thing is, I have millions of followers, yet you're on my mind all the time." And he looked at me, he truly was puzzled. And I told him, I said, "Bhagavan, it's because I'm talking to you every day, multiple times." And I would get advice, I would ask him things, I would share things. So you can do this, and it's very helpful. But eventually he told me, turn within, listen to yourself. And even for years, he said, "I'm not even talking to you anymore." And he cut me off so that I wouldn't use him as a crutch. And that's what all good gurus will eventually do. He said, it's time to go out on your own. Listen to yourself. So that feels very comfortable to me now. What I'm trying to say is there are all of these aspects of reality in this creation. There's so many, and there's so many I haven't even touched on. I'm sure there's some obvious things I haven't even talked about just because they haven't come to mind at the moment. This podcast really is simply to acknowledge what you're probably experiencing. You're a multidimensional being, and you probably experience openings a little here, a little there, a lot more here, a little bit more there. The main point is at your core, you relax and just listen to them. Yes, it can be difficult because if they're all closed and they're all opening, they all may be emitting a little bit of pain, because that's what, as we talked about before, closedness is. That's what tension that closes things is. It's made of pain. It's not made of repressed happiness. So it can be difficult, and yes, sometimes we need a break and we do fall into our addictions. Hopefully they're harmless ones, like maybe just a little TV or a jog or something like that. But take a break, take baby steps, but just gently trust everything that's happening. You know who's guiding all of this? It's you. It's your deepest self is guiding your entire life. So all of this is opening perfectly in its own way and in its own time. You're doing great. Another reason why I wanted to mention all of this is because sometimes on our spiritual path, it can be a little confusing if some very powerful guru or teacher centers around one thing, like conscious languaging or nutrition or angels or yoga or whatever. And you think, that's the way, I have to be good at that. That's their way. And they're focused on that thing mainly. And they're allowing that opening to flow through the rest of them. You know, I kind of like, let yourself be the multidimensional being that you are. If you're drawn to what they're doing, do it. But if you're drawn to many things, do the many things. And do them all on a level that feels right. One day maybe it feels better, hey, I'm going to work on my nutrition. Another day I'm going for a jog. Another day, hey, every day I think meditation is good because that dissolves the fundamental knots. And we've talked about that in other podcasts in the past. So I would do that every day. That would be the core, if you ask me. But it's your life. You do what you're drawn to do. Connecting to nature. Follow your heart. Follow your bliss. Connect to those things that speak to you, that open you. And as you do, you may then be drawn to another thing that's quite different, and then another thing, and then another thing, in a continual process of opening. As I said, you're the one guiding all of this. Your deepest self is the one guiding all this, so it's okay. When everything starts to drop away, or enough has dropped away, you experience yourself as all things, as oneness. And that's where deep trust comes in, because if you are all things, then you're simply trusting yourself. And as you see clearly, unformed consciousness starts to form as it comes back into existence in ways that support you and the direction that you want to go, as well as everybody else. Everybody's creating, whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Everybody's creating miracles. The world around us is a miracle. But when we become habituated and we just keep creating existence the same way, as I started talking about in the beginning of this podcast, just out of habit, as it goes in and out of existence, we just recreate every new creation the same way. We don't see it as a miracle because we're used to it. We've seen it 10 billion times now because we've created the same thing 10 billion times. But when you deviate and start to create different things, then it does feel like a miracle. It's the same power that you use to hold everything in a stationary, stagnant position. That's a power too. It's hard to make things come out the same all the time. So, Anyway, you're a multidimensional being. You're opening all up and down the line. You're doing a great job. If it's painful sometime and it just takes time to let things wind down, well, that's part of the process. You're opening up, you're releasing that pain, just like we've talked about in those other podcasts. So all I can say is you're doing great. Take baby steps. Don't wear yourself out. You're in it for the long haul. You take with you what you leave with in this life, so nothing is unused. Nothing goes to waste. You're never too old to start. Any evolution that you have in this life, any opening, you'll take it with you. You're an infinite being. And then you'll pick up where you left off, wherever you pop up. So enjoy. We've talked about that in past podcasts too. All right. Keep up the good work. Relax. Enjoy the best you can. And I look forward to talking to you the next time. Take care. Bye. Hello, this is William. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing it with somebody else. Send them a link. Thanks so much.